Without further ado, we will pass it over to you, Joel. Thanks so much for donating your time, your evening, this cold evening. You're taking the time to speak with us. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. My pleasure. So for those of you that don't know, claims tends to be, if you guys into Game of Thrones, I refer to claims as the Jon Snow of the insurance industry. All right. We tend to be overlooked a bit, but I've been on a mission to try to get us back to the forefront where I think we belong. So it's a pleasure to be able to speak with you all about claims, specifically what I do and the opportunities there are in the industry when it comes to claims rules. So to start it off, I may sound differently because I am originally from the beautiful island of Trinidad and Tobago. I moved to Canada in 2016, and I got into the industry in 2017. So I, like most people, it was a struggle to get something in Canada. You move to Canada and you may expect to get a job immediately, and it doesn't always happen like that. So I had to go through the process. I applied for jobs at Tim Hortons, Walmart, McDonald's, and got nothing. So eventually after, I believe that I hold the record for job applications in a single day. My job was to apply for jobs. That's what I did religiously for months. Eventually, I got an opportunity at a company called Desjardins. So it's an insurance company based in Quebec, but they have offices throughout Canada. So when I started, the job title was Client Service Coordinator. And it sounded like a very high-level job. I'm like, yes, I'm going to be dealing with clients. But it was not. My job was pretty much getting letters from adjusters and printing it out and sending fax to legal counsel and then mailing out those letters. So I did that as my day-to-day for approximately 7 months. Now, during that time, I sat next to the bodily injury adjusting team. And I would overhear them speaking about surveillance and negotiations and mediations and going to trial and pre-trial. And I was like, what is this? This sounds so interesting, right? So I would always sit and just listen. Sometimes I would take longer to do my work because I'm busy listening to what they're saying. And from then, I asked my manager, I would like to be a BI adjuster. That's what I want to do. No doubt, this is what I want to do. So from then, my aim was, what steps do I have to take to get to become a bodily injury adjuster? So as I said, I stayed at Desjardins for approximately 7 months. My dream job or company was Intact. But Intact at the time, they had this policy where they do not hire anyone unless they're a permanent resident or citizen. And at that time, I was on a work permit. So I'll never forget this. The morning that I got my permanent residence, I took the train back to my house, and how I celebrated was applying for a job at Intact. That was my way of celebrating. I went home, I was like, I have my PR, I'm going for Intact. And thankfully, through Melissa Lewin, she gave me an opportunity at Intact as an accident benefits assistant. And that was probably, I think, an opportunity for me I made a promise, I should say, that I'm going to invest everything that I have into the industry. So I wanted to learn, I wanted to grow, and I wanted to commit all of my talents to learning about the industry as much as possible. So I worked as an accident benefits assistant, trying to understand the business of insurance. So through that, I started my CIP, which I completed in probably just about 2 years. And then anytime there were opportunities to assist in other departments, I took it. So if there was a cat and property needed help, I would work with property. If auto needed help, I will work with auto. So this is something that I did that helped me learn different areas of the business as well. So I did that for probably about 18 months. And then I got the opportunity to be an accident benefits adjuster. And that was a great learning opportunity for me as well, because you had to learn to deal with people and to help people through some of their most difficult times. You know, someone gets into an accident and they come to you for help. They're injured, they're hurt physically, psychologically, and they're seeking their insurance company to step in and help. So I did that and I enjoyed it, but I always kept my eye on BI. That was where I wanted to go. So eventually I did get the opportunity to become a BI adjuster. And it was everything that I expected. You know, it was interesting, exciting, challenging. It posed different opportunities for me to learn about different types of business. And I really enjoyed it to the extent where I felt like this would be it for me. But then the opportunity came for me to get into specialty insurance, which is like a different level. So it takes a different skill set, different requirements, and I've been doing that since December 2022. So I've been a specialty adjuster since then, and what I do now, my job entails, there is some BI involved for commercial general liability stuff, but I did aviation insurance, financial directors and officers, errors and omissions, construction, property, everything that was on the list there as I was looking through. I'm like, wow, I did every one of those types of claims. And what that does, it gives you the ability to work anywhere, right? It gives you the ability to not only work for an insurance company, you could work as a risk manager, because now you have been able to see the type of claims that come out. It also gives you the ability to work for a brokerage, because now you are able to make representation on behalf of your client to an insurance company. And then it also opens your eyes to even underwriting, because as a claims professional, my job revolves around policy wording. So more instances than none, I may be more familiar with a policy than the underwriter, because an underwriter will do the policy once, but I review it on a daily basis because I'm getting claims every day. So there's a lot of learning opportunity that I was fortunate to have because of the transition from accident benefits to bodily injury to specialty and casualty, which is what I do now. And now another factor that is overlooked with claims is that we are now required to do a lot more marketing work. So outside of our day-to-day claims handling, what the market has realized is, wait a minute, the brokers want to make sure that their clients are taken care of. Ultimately, the underwriters don't take care of their clients. It's the claims professionals. So now there's a lot more emphasis on pushing the claims professionals out into the market so that the brokers and the claims professionals could have a relationship. And that is why a lot of my interaction right now is with brokers. I have brokers emailing me on a daily because they want to know what's going on with this claim. Could you help my client? So unlike before, where the claims adjuster would be in a corner at a desk, just working away, now we have a lot more responsibility, not just with regards to marketing, but also even vendor management, right? From a claim standpoint, we generate the economy of insurance because we create opportunities for lawyers, So I have lawyers that I would retain. So we have law firms that they want to build relationships because they get money from us. Engineers, they want to build relationships because they get money from us. Accounting firms, same thing. Private investigators, same thing. Risk managers, same thing. So we have a responsibility to manage relationships on the front end, which means with our brokers, underwriters, etc. But we also have a huge responsibility to handle our business on the back end, because we have to make sure that when a client has a claim, we have the resources and we know the right people who could step in and assist us with having the claim resolved. So for instance, if one of my clients were to get charged with, let's say, sexual assault, as an example, there's a criminal matter going on. Now, we don't get involved with that. However, if one of the victims or alleged victims decide that they want to take legal action, right? And that comes to me. Now, my job is to make sure that I have the best people available to assist, whether it be with investigations, whether it be with providing a legal defense, whether it be with searching out witnesses, whether it be with surveillance. So that is why it's important across the spectrum for us to know who are the best resources that we have, to have relationships with those resources, because ultimately we would need them to help us to do our jobs. So my day, a typical day for me would be, if a claim comes in, first thing I would do is contact the insured to find out what happened. And also to give some assurances, right? That don't worry, like we'll look into it, we'll take care of it. Help appease them a bit. The second thing I would do is review coverage, because ultimately we are guided by the policy. So if the loss is something that is not covered by the policy, so for instance, fraud, right? Fraud is typically excluded from a policy. So at that point, you will have to deliver the bad news that, okay, my apologies, but because the allegations are fraudulent, or it involves fraud, we are unable to provide coverage at this time. So once that is done, the matter is closed. Now, if there is coverage, right, then my job is to then determine what help does this person need. Is it something that I could deal with myself? Could I resolve it without the help of anyone? If so, I would do that. If not, do they need a lawyer? Do they need surveillance? Do they need an engineer? Do they need an accountant? So all those things are factored in. Now, one of the most challenging type of claims that we do now is cyber insurance, because it's relatively new and it's international, right? So I could have a cyber claim for a hacker that's somewhere in a different part of the world, right? It might be ransomware, or it might be data breach. But then I have a responsibility to know who are the best technical people that we have available, who would be best to negotiate the ransomware, who could help with business interruption. So all the role of a claims adjuster is ever evolving. It doesn't stop, right? You have to realize that we come into play when there is a problem. So ultimately, our job and what we get paid to do is to find solutions to problems. And sometimes you have to be creative, right? A company might give you guidelines to review, but those guidelines don't give you solutions. So you have to be able to think for yourself, think independently, think outside of the box, because ultimately that is what the expectation is. You have a situation, you need to solve it. And that is the gist of being a claims handler. Whether it be property, auto, accident benefits, be ultimately your job revolves around something bad happening. Claims don't get called when there's good, right? There's no good claim to have, right? We get called when there is a problem. So we have to be able to find solutions for those problems. And ultimately, that's what you do as a claims handler. Anyone have any questions with regards to that?
I have lots of questions, Joel. So the first question that we had was from Reiji, and Reiji wanted to know about one of your most challenging experiences that you've had as a claims specialist and what you did to manage the situation.
So when I was an accident benefits adjuster, I think this is probably the most difficult thing I've had to do. So I received a claim where it was a fatality. So our insured was involved in a motor vehicle accident, and unfortunately, he died as a result. And as an accident benefits adjuster, I don't think a lot of people know this. You have benefits under your AV policy for a fatality. So I had to make that phone call to the widower to let them know what these benefits are, to get information as to what happened, and then to help with funeral arrangements, etc. Now, I've never done that before. And emotionally, I wasn't prepared to have that conversation. So I had to literally take maybe 15, 20 minutes to try to prep myself. So what do you say? What do you say to someone who, and this is not weeks after, months after, this is literally days after this happened, and what I realized is at that point, what you want is to be human, right? It's not about insurance. It's not about policy. It's about helping people. So when I called her, I was very honest. I was like, listen, I spent the last 15 minutes trying to figure out what to say to you. And the only thing I came up with is, I'm sorry. I was like, I'm here to help. And whatever you need, I explained to her what I can do. And it really did lay the platform for her to feel relieved that she had support. Because she was concerned about the financial burden of funeral planning and all those things. And I was able to help because she didn't feel like she was speaking to an insurance adjuster. She felt like she was speaking to a family friend or a friend. And she actually wrote a very heartwarming email to my manager afterwards, just thanking Intact for having the ability to just be human with her. And I think from an adjuster standpoint, sometimes we get caught up with all the technical stuff, right? Which is important, right? Don't get me wrong. Like, you have to review coverage, you have to review liability, you have to assess damages. Like, those things are important. But ultimately, what we have to remember is that the most important thing is that you're dealing with another human. Whether it be good news or bad news, you have to make sure that your interaction is one that is positive and one that comes from a place of care and kindness.
That's a good example. Thank you. On a lighter note, do you have any interesting fraud stories you can tell us?
Yes, so I think COVID may have been like the perfect time for fraudsters to try to get as much money out of insurance as possible. So I had this claim, and this person was actually a refugee in Canada. So the understanding is that he was receiving a grant from the government, So he was not supposed to be working, right? Because he's receiving this grant. So he got into this accident, and like when I saw the damages of the vehicle, it was minimal, very minimal. But his claims were extensive for physical damage. He can't walk, can't bend, he can't do anything. So I'm like, it doesn't make sense. If you get into such a minor vehicular accident, how do you have such serious injuries? And this went on. He got a lawyer, a very aggressive lawyer, right? So the lawyer was aggressive. I was equally aggressive. We were going back and forth for a while. And then I said, you know what? Let me put surveillance on this guy, right? And guys, let me tell you all, social media is fine. Nothing is wrong with social media. But you cannot have a claim, right, stating that you can't drive, you can't stand, you can't sit, you can't live. But then you're doing Facebook Live, driving from Kitchener, Ontario to Toronto, and you're dancing. To be honest, I didn't even need the surveillance. I just went on the social media. I was like, oh, Facebook Live. I clicked it, I viewed it, I saved it. And I called his lawyer. I was like, hey, just so you know, I have your client dancing and driving all the way to Toronto, Ontario. And he's like, okay, let's just settle. I'm like, nope, nothing, nothing. And the thing about it is fraud is so common, but it's also so easy to find. Because for you to stay true to a fraudulent claim, you have to deny yourself of so much, right? You can't go out partying. You can't take your garbage out. You can't be in Jamaica on a beach flexing your muscles, because all those things will obviously sort of nullify a claim for damages. But just to say, I assess things in a fair manner so that if you are injured, I will treat you accordingly. But once you get into like overstating your injuries, I think that is where our approach changes, that we now have to not treat you as a genuine claimant, but treat you as an opportunist, right? So for any of you who may get into claims, you always have to be conscious of not everybody is going to be fraudulent. So you treat people fairly until they show you otherwise, where you have to maybe step up your investigations and do some more investigative work to make sure that you're doing just service to your claim.
Okay, those are great stories. Thank you, Joel. So we do have some questions. So if you're in the hot seat, I'm going to fire them off to you. Our first question is, if you're working with a data analyst, what's the most valuable insight or intel that they could provide to you to help you work more effectively? So, what is something that that sort of data team can help the claims team with?
Well, so to be fair, when it comes to data, we are more of assistants to the data analysts than they are to us. So we provide them with the information, and what that does, it helps the underwriting team and it helps the actuaries understand where claims are happening, like what types of payouts are happening on different types of claims, etc. Where I see data helping us would probably be more so with regards to vendor management, because we could see which vendors that we use, which law firms that we use, how much money we pay them, what are the outcomes of the files, how long a file takes to resolve. So those are the types of information we would use when it comes to data analysts. But more so, I think we are the resource for them to get the information that they need.
So you're saying claims is the most important role in the entire industry.
I strongly believe that.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So next question is, what advice can you give for someone who wants to move from being a broker to working in claims?
So I think that on the broker side, you would have the experience with dealing with the client. So I would recommend getting into a first party type of claim. So whether it be property, auto, or accident benefits, somewhere where you are interfacing with the insured. So I think that it will be easier to transition because you have that experience interfacing with the client already. You understand how to speak, you understand what the needs of the client would be. So it's easier to transition from a broker side and get into first party insurance claims. So look at property, look at accident benefits, look at auto. Those areas might be an easier transition.
Okay, thank you. I find it interesting that once people start working in insurance, they don't leave.
Very
So
true. Yeah.
once you start gaining the skills in a certain role, like a broker, it transitions over and people will move around a lot. They'll move roles, they'll move companies, but they always stay in the industry.
And just to add to that, even if like on a broker side, a lot of brokerages have uh, claims advocates as well. So that could also be a good segue to get into frontline claims handling. If you work at a brokerage and there are opportunities for claims advocates, I think that will also be a good stepping stone as well.
That's great. So next question. I would like to understand how the insurance company pays for the claim. Is it through the money they collect through premiums, or if the claim is a really high claim, do they borrow money from a bank? So can you tell us a little bit about loss reserves and
So each, you have to remember that each policy has a policy limit. So an insurance company knows what the max payout they would want to make on any policy. So they would set policy limits based on that. So it could be 1 million, 2 million, etc. Now, on the flip side, we spoke about reinsurance before. If the limit is so high that the company may not necessarily feel comfortable taking all of that risk, they would get reinsurance, which would then cover that risk as well. Now, premiums come into the company invests premiums and would make money off of the premiums. But that, what we do is reserve per claim. So if a claim comes in, we are expected to do an assessment of damages. Now, the assessment doesn't have to be an actual amount, but we look at what the probable amount would be that we would pay out on the claim. So once we do that assessment, we would reserve accordingly. So that company, through the data people, they will see, all right, we have, in total, we have 50 million reserves. So they will make sure that there's 50 million in liquid currency available for us if and when we have to pay out. So there's no going to the bank. There's simply a matter of insurance companies would balance what they're willing to pay out based on their appetite, and they would make sure they have those resources there, whether it be through them or through reinsurance. And what we've seen a lot of as well is that a lot of companies are actually forming partnerships. So for instance, I look at Access. Access may have 50% share of a risk, right? The risk might be 100 million. So Access position might be like, we're not willing to take 100% of a $100 million risk. We will take 50%, and then let's say Travelers might take another 50%. So therefore the risk is shared. So that there are a few ways to ensure that the insurance company is not in a position where they're paying out more than they have, right? But the bank is not something that we do. We typically have the funds in-house, And when we don't, we would seek reinsurance for it.
Yeah, and this is all regulated by the government as well to
Correct.
ensure
Yep.
that, the clients are protected in case something does happen.
Yeah. And just to add to that, a lot of companies also have something called a self-insured retention. So a lot of our policies at Access, for example, there might be a self-insured retention of something up to $250,000. So what that is if a claim materializes, the insured is responsible for everything up to 250,000. We would handle the claim, but they would pay for legal services, they would pay for indemnity. But once it exceeds that 250,000, then we would get involved and have to pay. So that's also another way of us managing the risk as well.
Okay, great. So we have about 5 minutes left, so we'll try and get through some more questions. This next one's a little bit different. So this person is asking, as an upcoming graduate, how can I determine which area of the insurance industry aligns best with my skills? Are there any roles that allow new grads to explore different areas? So I have some insights into this, but Joel, I'll let you go first. Let's see what you can share from your experiences.
Well, I think for someone like you, it's good to firstly get an understanding of the different roles that exist in the industry. So career connections is definitely a good option. Um, you could also, there are a lot of seminars that take place when it comes to underwriting, brokering, and claims. So it helps kind of give you some insight into what each role entails, and then that will give you some information to make an informed decision as to what you think best fits your skill set.
Yeah, there's tons of resources out there. So you can start reading, like the Canadian Underwriter. They would have a lot of really interesting articles. Um, of course, Insurance Career Connections does lots of different events and things that you can attend, like this one. A lot of organizations will offer a new grad rotation. So they'll move you through a few different departments, and sometimes you get to pick at the end which one you're interested in, sometimes you don't. I'd also say if there's any networking events in your areas, those are also really great to attend. And I know, Joel, you're pretty active. You do a lot of different events, lots of networking. So lots of different resources. What I'll do just to save time is I'm going to send out an email afterwards, and I'll include some of those different resources that you can look at.
And just to add to that, you're also not bound to any particular field that you get into. So don't feel like if I get into claims, I'm stuck in claims. Like the industry is such where a lot of skills are transferable, so you're able to move around the industry if you so choose.
Yeah, lots of people do move around, and sometimes, that job that you don't like is actually a really valuable experience for you because you can
Right.
learn quite a bit from it. And that's, you always want to be very professional. So even if you're like, oh, this organization isn't for me, or this role isn't for me, you still want to treat everyone with respect and be very professional when you leave, because the industry is so close-knit that there's a good chance you might end up working with those people again down the road. So you want to maintain those relationships. Okay, so next question. This one is kind of interesting. So can you share the process of how funds are dispersed after a claim has occurred? Is the claims department responsible, or does the finance department get involved?
So the finance department gets involved. So it depends on each company is different. Most companies, again, once we reserve, the money is available. When it's time to make the payment, then finance would come in and make sure, because of everything that happened with Ukraine and whatnot, they will have to make sure there are no sanctions on the payee, right? So no payment going to Russia or different territories that are sanctioned currently. And then they will make sure all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed, and they would actually issue the payment on our behalf. We just send the request, and then they will do the processing on our behalf.
Okay, great. Great. I want to ask you two more questions, so you'll have to make the answers quick.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in a situation where you felt unsafe because of an unhappy customer?
Me personally, no, but I have a former colleague at the company I worked at that was threatened by a biker of Hell's Angels, and he required escort and security for I think a week. We had to hire additional security because of the threat. So I have not personally, thank you, but I have colleagues who have been threatened before.
I think sometimes people who work in certain roles will make sure that they don't have like their last name on their social media profiles and things like that, just to kind of keep a little bit more privacy.
Right.
Okay, so a couple people have sort of asked similar questions, so I'm gonna combine it into one. And basically, we have a few people who are either new to Canada, are international students, and they're looking for some suggestions on how to get started. So before you answer, we're coming up to 8 o'clock, so I know that some of you have to go. So if you have to log off, thank you so much for coming. You can just pop off. If you can stay for a few minutes though, then we'll get Joel's suggestions on how you can get started in the industry. So if you're an international student or you're moving here or just kind of looking to get started, any tips on how you were successful
I
aside
think
from applying for the most jobs one day?
I think what is important for international students, especially if you're coming into Canada like educated from where you're from, right? Whether it be from India, from the Caribbean, it's important to realize that whatever happened there is not really taken into consideration here. I came to Canada as a seasoned professional, and it really didn't have much bearing. So you have to be mentally prepared to start at a lower level. So what I would advise people is to be strategic. The competition for a claims adjuster would be different than the competition for a claims assistant. All right. So there's no harm in starting as a claims assistant, learning the operations, getting your feet wet, building relationships, and then starting to make strategic moves upward. With the insurance industry, the important thing is to get in, right? That's the most difficult thing, right? Getting in. But when you do get in, that's when you have control based on how you present yourself, how many networking events you attend, how you put yourself out there. And then you can move up quickly. And in no time, you'll be at a senior level once you put in the work. So look at lower levels, whether it be underwriting assistants, claims assistants, and I think that it will give you a better opportunity to get into the industry at that level.
Do you have any tips on perseverance and kind of just staying motivated and not getting too down with the situation?
Yeah, you have to realize, and I had to learn it the hard way, like we're not entitled to anything, right? We come and we need to put our head down and work extremely hard, sometimes harder than others, right? To get where you want to get to. So even if you're getting denied, don't give up, continue, put yourself out there. And I think what a lot of insurance companies are looking for now is people who they don't want employment, they want a career. It's a difference, right? So they would be more inclined to give an opportunity to someone who is showing a level of commitment to the insurance industry. And that commitment means attending a seminar or attending a networking event or a career fair. And you see someone once, you see them twice, they see you a couple of times, they realize, okay, this person is clearly committed and devoted to getting into the industry, and they may be more inclined to give them an opportunity to get in. So you have to be committed, firstly, and you have to persevere regardless of the denials and rejections. Don't let it discourage you from continuing.